Friends, welcome to my MOOC lecture session today. I will be speaking on today ideological underpinnings in global economy and politics, contemporary views. Think of this present world. The world we live today is marked by a number of dominant features. Enormous and increasing technological advancement towards maximization of inorganic production, standardization of consumer life, collectivization of finance capital across countries, and also redistribution of denationalized labor. I would request you to minutely look into the meaning of every term I use today. All the terms have significant meanings. I have used the terms, number one, enormous technological advancement towards maximization of, this is important, towards maximization of inorganic production. Another important thing is standardization of consumer life. On the other hand, collectivization of the finance capital. This is important, finance capital. And the other important thing is denationalized labor being redistributed all over the world. All the views are emerging out of these dominant features. Of course, all these have been achieved through the process of globalization. This is a very popular term we use today. There are so many definitions of this globalization. I think the excellent definition has been given by Anthony da Costa in his recent book. It is defined there as an ongoing and contested process of international economic integrity through which trade, capital, investment, and people expansively and intensely interconnect the national economies. Of course, it has tremendously increased its space at the end of the Cold War bipolarism, and the whole world today is gradually becoming consumerized. At the same time, this process has transformed the philosopher's socio-cultural vision of universalism into a technological view of the single unit of the world, let it be termed as the global village. It has a profound impact on the current politics, economy, and society, particularly in the form of uncontrolled free market, in which nationalism, national economies are forcefully made consistent with the principles of neoliberalism. This is another term we have to understand. Principles of neoliberalism. On the other hand, we have said that we have made nationalism, national economies consistent with these principles. You see, there are attempts of deconstruction of local identities. Why? For global uniformity. There are attempts of commercializing everything. Life, in fact, life has been commoditized from birth to death, from disease to cure, as we have very recently experienced through the COVID days. You see, we find in the present world that it is a society, a self-distanced, disjunct society. We are appropriating communal culture in this disjunct, self-distant society, which we call digital society. And we have taken it as normal. In newspapers, in journal articles, it is said that we are living in the neo-normal world. Of course, analysis of this process, analysis of this present-day life has been polarized. There are conflicting views. Contemporary views are always questioning each other. We may divide these views broadly into two categories. The views of the critics. We see that those, the entrepreneurs, the technocrats, the managerial community, the potential workforce, who are mostly benefited from this process, who can reach distant areas, distant markets with their technocrats and with their capital investment, who can outsource costs to the world of cheap labor. Of course, they welcome all these developments because they are mostly benefited. So to their mind, through this process we are advancing, always advancing, we are progressing. But of course there are other views. The depressed youth, those who are alienated from the capital maximization, in essence, those who get the least from it, they can't welcome it. They are the most serious critics of this process. But the criticism is there. Some welcome and some criticize, but the process is on. It can't be stopped. This is our present world. There are ideological contradictions, ideological criticisms. There are explanations for the benefits of progress. Social conflicts increase, but at the same time, class conflicts are redefined for comparative advantage of the big people. So all these things are there. This contradictory explanation. There are other side, the side of the structural changes in the society. Apart from the structural changes, life has already experienced a massive involution. This is another term which you have to look into. Involution. You see, Clifford Geertz, G-W-R-T-Z, Clifford Geertz, when explaining the changes the economic changes, the social changes in Indonesia and the outer world, he first used this term, the term involution. It is neither evolution nor revolution, it is involution. That is, there are changes, but at the same time, there are no changes. You see, if we think of Roland Barthes, if we think of the concept of myth, which is real and unreal at the same time, this is like that. We are facing changes, but at the same time, we are not coming out of our crisis in life. Apart from structural changes, life has experienced this involution, and this involution is experienced by way of living in the post-truth age. In the newspapers, in the journal articles, you will many times find this word, post-truth age. We know about postmodernism, we know about post-colonialism. Now we are talking of post-truth age, when reality is being created out of unreal by media partners and by other interpreters, ideological interpreters of the society. The reality is being created of unreality, and so the arrogant statement of Elon Musk that his decision was to buy the Twitter for the future of civilization. So when we think of this present world, we must be serious about the meanings of these significant words. As we have noted that in this post-truth age, we are facing so many problems, and we also must think of how to resolve it, how to get out of it. We are worried about, in this age, we are worried about two basic pillars of civility, of civil society, of civil life. Two basic pillars. One is nationalism and another is democracy. When we think of nationalism, we must define it vis-a-vis the state, because we are very fond of speaking of the nation state. What is a nation? Nation is a collection of people bound as one by common ancestry, language, common culture, common tradition, all these things. Nation is an emotional aspect, a cultural aspect, a social aspect. On the other hand, state is a political aspect. An organization used to exercise power over the people, constructed in geographical terms. Now, the process of which I have told you, if you think seriously, there are challenges from this process on both these aspects, nation and state. How? Today, you see, the rich world, the first world, the dominant world, were very eager to expand their globalized attitude, that world works in a way so that the sense of common heredity fades away in the minds of young generations. This is one thing. On the other hand, look at the first world, how they're treating the state for their economic expansion. They're helping towards loss of the sanctity of the state borders. Nation state had some borders. They're helping towards relaxation of those borders for free movement of labor and capital. You see, in Europe, among many states, the passport and visa bar is lifted for free movement. How does it affect? We will come to that point. But the net effect is the mystification of the border is lost. So also the mystification of the nation's boundaries is also lost. That is a point of crisis, but at the same time we must admit that it is inevitable. Migration, emigration, immigration, all these are the natural consequences of the process of globalization. As Eric Hobsbawm, in his excellent book, Globalization, Democracy and Terrorism, has explained with statistical analysis. What he says? He says that with the onset of globalization, there was also a process of diasporic globalization. You see, from 1974 to 1998, there is a statistical analysis. 3 first world countries, USA, Australia, Canada, they received 22 million migrants. This mass migration is inevitable under the impact of globalization. 22 million migrants entered into the territories of these 3 countries up to 1998. In the next 2 years, 3.5 million were added. Around the same time, you see, 4.5 million people went to 15 states, 15 state members of the European Union. The foreigners living in the Spanish lands almost tripled between 1996 and 2003, from 500,000 to 1.6 million. International Organization for Migration, IOM in short, calculated that by the end of the 20th century, the mass migration reached up to the height of more than 100 million people, of which 20 millions were refugees, but others were not refugees. They were simply willing migrants. The United Nations agencies have also calculated that by the first quarter of the 21st century, the migration would reach up to around 200 million people. This massive migration is forcing us to rethink about nationalism, national identity. You see, we find that when the migration is taking place under this impact of globalization, two more concepts are coming up. One is homeland and another is hostland. The land wherefrom they are migrating, that is their homeland. The land where they are arriving, that is their hostland. And the relations between the homeland and hostland, that is a big question. The ideologists explain this in this way. There are two concepts of nationalism, two concepts of nationalism. The old concept of nationalism has been transformed into these two concepts. One is long-distance nationalism. Think of our colonial history. When we are fighting for our freedom, when we were struggling for our independence in colonial period, Ghadar Party was established in San Francisco. The trend started from there. Why the people founded Ghadar Party in San Francisco? They were moved by the feelings of long-distance nationalism. But that long-distance nationalism again was transformed under the impact of globalization into transnationalism. Suppose the Indian community people settled in USA today, they are moved by this concept, that is transnationalism. Out of these relations, you see, they now start another process, that is money remittances to the homelands to contribute to national economics there. So national relations has undergone a tremendous change. You see, out of this distant nationalism, transnationalism, the people are contributing to the national economies of their homelands. And so the political relations between the host land and the homeland is also changing. Before, I talked of the crisis in national feelings, nationalism. Now I'm pointing to this, that it is another type of nationalism which is having a shield against that. So on the one side, some ideologists say that nationalism is in peril. On the other side, there is another view that it is not in peril. The Western people are fading away the old concept of nationalism, but the Eastern people who migrated to the West, they are giving rise to another form of nationalism, that is transnationalism, which actually is helping reconstruction of national economies in the East. That is, in the third world, in the developing world, in the underdeveloping world. You see, in Europe, Many countries are speaking of giving dual nationality to the migrants. India is not giving dual nationality, but India is issuing People of India Origin Card, PIO card, giving overseas citizenship, observing, you say, Prabhashi Bharatiyo Divas and Prabhashi Bharatiyo, celebrating Prabhashi Bharatiyo Award, to just give shield to this crisis of nationalism. You see, today, India is acting as the president of the G20 group. So India has an enormous opportunity to give leadership to consolidation of this type of nationality, and at the same time to show the European world. You see, in European world, the English House of Commons are losing importance, Senate of US is losing importance, but India, now as the president of the G20 group, has the opportunity of showing the first world that we can make a shield against this globalization process by maintaining nationality, state sanctity in the way of a new form. One form is distant nationalism. The other form is restoring the civility by highlighting the state heredity, by highlighting the traditional enrichment side by side with technological advancement. Technology can be used also by restoration of those ideals. So India has that enough opportunity in these days. That is the ray of hope that the crisis is there, but resolution is also there. Thank you.